Welcome to Mentoring Moments. Mentoring Moments is a sub-series of the E-commerce Edge podcast. It is composed of clips taken from Jason's one-to-one and group mentorship sessions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mentoring Moments. I'm here with my man, Ivo, and he and I are actually catching up for our very first time for one of our mentorship sessions, and he's come to the table today with an amazing agenda that I think will be super valuable to lots of you out there. Ivo has a SaaS platform. If you go and you check out the podcast, we did an episode where I interviewed Ivo, and we were talking about his SaaS platform, the Next Commerce SaaS platform, where he was sharing with me how his platform helps manufacturers to create a dealer channel sales opportunity all within the same brand. And so we were talking about that in a huge level of detail. And when we started to tee up this opportunity around mentorship, he had some really good questions because obviously he's building a SaaS platform for the industry, for manufacturers, for dealers, for distributors. And so his focus is very much on the B2B commerce space. But I think that his questions, because he's building a SaaS platform, will be super relevant to basically anybody else out there building any kind of SaaS platform targeting any market. And his key question, if we put it under one headline banner, is SaaS partnerships. Ivo, it's okay, what type of partnerships make sense? When do they make sense? How do I develop them? How do I manage them? How do I start to create? Because the reality is that no software, no individual in this industry can operate in a vacuum. We don't just need clients, right? We don't just need customers. We also need partnerships. And the reality is that it takes a village, is the term I like to say. It takes a village to succeed. When we had the podcast episode, we can think of that as a partnership in a way, even though there was no money that exchanged hands. By us having that discussion, you helped me to create hopefully some super valuable content for my audience. I hopefully helped you to expose your technology to a much wider audience than maybe it would normally hit. We have default or de facto partnerships, but then we also have more intentional partnerships, right? That usually have some sort of a commercial benefit to both parties. They have some sort of marketing benefit to both parties. And that's really what we want to talk about today, right?
Very much. And let me also say that I am very happy to be here. I'm actually very excited. As you said, it's our first mentoring moment session, and I've been looking forward to it for such a long time. And thank you very much for having me, Jason, and being my mentor. And yes, as you said, Jason, look, I'm really looking to understand the different facets of partnerships, and I'm eager to understand and to learn from your experience, from your view. Maybe kick off with the first question. Do partnerships make sense? Because I don't think the question is always yes. And also then we can look into what kind of partnerships are there and which ones are applicable for my SaaS.
Makes complete sense. And I think that this is a very common question, especially when you're formulating your GTM plan, your go-to-market plan, right? There's a few different types of partnerships that usually make sense early on. Then there's different types of partnerships that make sense when you're more mature. And I think that this is the same regardless of what type of software you're developing. There's certain partnerships, but in SaaS in particular, there's two primary buckets. I'll just say buckets of partnerships that usually you have to start thinking about. The first bucket is technical partnerships. And that is usually composed of which technology partners do I really want to engage with that make sense for both parties, that make it easier for my clients to implement my technology. And Eva, what I'll do is I'll just get you to maybe mute the mic from your side while I'm speaking, just so that you can take notes, you can do all those things without it, because I can hear it in the background, and that'll be great. So in the area of technical partnerships, specifically for you, when we think about what technical partnerships make sense, especially in the beginning, it's sure your platform is like a piece of JavaScript that gets coded into the platform. And most platforms have the ability to inject code into the site through a code snippet management backend technology. But oftentimes going beyond that, what can make it even easier for brands to implement is almost all platforms, whether it's WordPress or other CMS platforms, whether it's commerce platforms like Shopify, whether it's a commerce platform like a big commerce or any of the B2B focused platforms, which is the space you would play, they usually will have app or extension frameworks built into the platform. So I'll just use BigCommerce as an example because this is probably one of the easiest, most relevant examples. They've got both a code manager in the back where you can, in admin, you can upload JavaScript snippets and tell the system whether you want that to be in the header, the footer, the body. You can tell it basically where you want the script to be injected into the theme. And you can also define which pages and page types. You can make it a global snippet. You can make it a page type or front end type specific implementation. But then they also have an app store, right? And Shopify, BigCom, Magento, most major e-commerce platforms have an app store. And they have an app framework. That means installing the app is usually easier than manually installing the JavaScript. And you can increase your adoption rate by creating a single click app for these different platforms to where all the merchant has to do is go to the app store. The application doesn't have to have a cost. It can be free. So I'll use Klaviyo as an example. So it costs you nothing to install the Klaviyo app on your BigCommerce store or your Shopify store. They make their money through the subscription cost of the platform. So to get it integrated via their app costs you nothing, right? You pay your fees directly to Klaviyo based on your usage of the platform, but to get it integrated to all your systems is free. And I feel like this is where technical partnerships for you make the most sense because sure, your implementation might be relatively easy for an agency to implement on behalf of the merchant, but it may not be easy for a merchant to do themselves unless they have some in-house technical capability. So by creating these technical partnerships with those platform vendors and saying, look, we're gonna write an app, we're gonna partner with you to write a single click install app that injects our code into the right places within the platform to where the merchant can, in a single click, our functionality can be integrated with your platform out of the box. And in the case of WordPress, obviously, not all WordPress users are using WooCommerce, but a lot are. And so you'll probably want to have an app extension that works with and without WooCommerce, that integrates in with the WooCommerce functionality if they're running it, and integrates in with just the CMS functionality if they're not running e-commerce on the platform. So you got to think about all the little ways and all the little gotchas, because the whole idea behind forming these technical partnerships is to make it easy to adopt your solution. That's the whole point, is the higher the barrier and the higher the cost of integration of your platform in with other software, the more friction it builds and the less likely that someone is to adopt your technology. So when I'm thinking about like if I had a SaaS platform like you, I would always be thinking, where are the challenges based on your experience with your existing customers? Where were all the challenges? Where were all the friction points of getting your technology implemented within their technology stack? And I would just go down the line systematically. Okay, where's my biggest opportunity? Is it with Shopify? Is it with WordPress? Is it with Craft? Is it with some other CMS platform? Where am I seeing my number one opportunities emerging from the market, and systematically go one by one and make those technology partnerships and integrations your number one priority and start there? That would be my general advice. Does that kind of all make sense?
Sorry, I just had to unmute. Yes, definitely. That makes totally sense because what we're actually saying is, okay, look, we need to consider the ease of integration, yes, for sure. But at the same time, we need to consider the market itself, right? And by looking at the, let's say, the partnerships that are most relevant, or the partners that are most relevant, then we will also understand, okay, now what are their ways of integrating with different solutions? And then based on the platform, as you said, for instance, BigCommerce or maybe Shopify or WooCommerce, whatever that platform or ecosystem is, we can then again further drill down into providing an API or probably a widget And why do we need to do that? And now that will then close, or that will be the full circle, as I understand, because we also need to go the extra mile to understand whether or who is going to do the integration, right? is it an agency that is maybe more experienced, has the technical skill set and know-how to do that? Or are we actually looking for the merchant himself to undertake the integration, and then that know-how, that how to do that, becomes maybe a whole different story? That actually I have never thought about that, but it totally makes sense, right? It totally makes sense because also me as a consumer, right? I also would like the barriers to be as low as possible for me to, I don't know, to buy something, right? Or to install my internet because I recently have moved, right? So the easier or the lower the friction points, the easier it is.
Yeah, and I think that there's also a bit of a hybrid road here, which is to say, look, our app might have, let's say there's, I don't know what it is in your case, but let's just say hypothetically that it's got a configuration. Let's say it's a single click app that you build for a Shopify or a BigCom or whatever. They install the app, and maybe the merchant still would have to have a decent amount of technical understanding to even configure the app for their particular implementation. So you probably need to think about, okay, in my configurator of the app, maybe that's targeted more at agencies, for example, that would need to configure it, but at least they would have an interface to do the configuration instead of having to do the configuration in code, right? That effectively your app is going to generate the theme code, for example, that is going to make that super easy to get implemented. But you still, with your technology, you might still need a reasonable amount of technical skill to even be able to configure the app to seamlessly work on the front end. And that's okay. But I think that even if your tooling is targeted at agencies, the less manual heavy lifting they have to do in the theme themselves, the better. And it will make it easier for them to configure and get that application up and running on the platform. So a lot of Klaviyo installs, for example, in a Shopify or in a BigCommerce, even though they've got the apps, you still have to configure it. For example, you have to configure in the app which of the transactional emails that you want Klaviyo to own so that the transactional emails of the default platform, your BigCommerce, your Shopify, so those can be disabled and those can be owned based on events that happen on the front end that then triggers Klaviyo to send those transactional emails. And you need to configure the variables inside Klaviyo to pull in the right data from the metrics, which is their fancy term for events, right? When an event happens in the e-commerce platform, we want to trigger off XYZ email or flow, and we want that email to have these variables in it to be presented to the customer when they receive that email. Now, that's a technical piece of work, right? But the actual integration and the connection between Klaviyo and the core platform is already taken care of. The agency doesn't need to do that bit. All they have to do is to do the configuration, which is still reasonably technical in its own way, but at least they have an administration panel that they can do that work in, and they don't need to do that as a full custom implementation every time. So I think there's a bit of a happy medium here, which is to say, if we have an extremely technical platform, maybe it will never be easy for a non-technical merchant to implement. But if at least we can give the tooling to the agency to make it easy for them to implement, then it's more likely that they will recommend the solution because it's something that they can charge a little bit of money for. And then this leads and segues very nicely into your next question, which is how do we then build partnerships with non-technical partners? And how can we build partnerships with the channel? How can we build partnerships with agencies? Why would they want to recommend our platform? Why would they want to implement the platform beyond just maybe the sales benefit or the UX benefit that it brings to the merchants that they work with? How does it benefit me as an agency? Because remember, agencies have to create sustainable business models in order for them to stay in business, right? And so maybe it's a one-time implementation cost that they can charge out for under their normal retainer that they have with the client, but they want it to be more valuable long-term to the business so that they can build a more sustainable business over time without having to constantly sell new work into merchants. So the technical partnerships that I have seen work the best in the industry, especially for SaaS platforms, are those that give lifetime rev share of that SaaS platform, so long as the merchant stays a continuous client of that platform, right? a lot of SaaS platforms will come out and they'll say, hey, we'll give you a one-time commission for bringing us a client and doing an implementation with us. We'll give you like a one-time cut, maybe the first year of fees. We'll give you an upfront, commission for effectively providing us a lead that we didn't have to pay a CAC fee to go and acquire ourselves. We've acquired that customer through you. So instead of paying Meta or Google or Apple, instead of paying them to acquire the customer, we're going to just pay you to acquire that customer. And I think that's very short-sighted. All of the SaaS platforms that do this have less success in the market than the platforms that do a perpetual rev share of some kind of the SaaS fees. And here's the reason why. And I don't want to make this all about the money. It's not all about the money. It's about which partnerships are more or less valuable to an agency and why, right? We have to see it. We have to have empathy for the agencies that are doing this work, right? Or the consultants that are recommending the technology, or whoever it is that is able to get you penetrated into the market in ways that you wouldn't be able to on your own, right? Because they have access to their client base. The point is they work very hard. Agencies, consultants, whoever works in the space in a consultative capacity, they work hard to keep their clients on those platforms that they think will benefit those merchants and their end customers. And so a lot of time it's about an ongoing evangelism of the platform. It's not just a one and done implementation. It's no, let's look at your analytics. Let's see how much revenue this is driving for your business. Let's track this over time versus your other acquisition channels. Let's look at this very holistically as part of your entire infrastructure of channel mix. And let's make sure that we're always, because the channel mix will necessarily have to evolve over time. That's the nature of business. One channel's hot this year and another channel will be hot, next year. And that comes down to social channels. There's lots of both sales and marketing channels that evolve over time. And these agencies and consultants want the best for their customer over time. And as long as you continue to bring value as a channel to that merchant, that agency or consultant is going to continue to recommend that they stay with you, right? So they play a very important role in encouraging the merchant to stay with a specific channel so long as it makes commercial sense to do so. They're almost playing an ongoing sales role on your behalf to encourage the client to do things that are good for their business. And so that means that you don't have to do that. You don't, for example, you would potentially have to build out a significant merchant success team without agency partners doing that merchant success piece on your behalf. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have a merchant success team. I think you will need that. But the way in which you would need to resource that would be totally different than if you had advocate agency and consulting partners working on your behalf. So just as in the way that you want to incent them to bring you business so that you don't have to go to market directly and spend a whole shitload of money to acquire new customers, you want them to help you keep your customers too. And they play a very important role in that because it's a very trusted role within the merchant. So these are just some things to start thinking about when you're creating your partnership model for agencies and consultants in particular. It's okay. Do we have a straight one-off commission? Do we have an ongoing rev share? Is there if we have an ongoing rev share, is there a qualification requirement to retain that rev share over time? And what does that qualification look like? Or maybe we have a rev share that's on a sliding scale. First year, 20%, second year, 10%, third year and on 5%. There's a lot of ways you can slice and dice this in the way that you engage with agencies. But I think if you're always having empathy for the agency situation and the way that they have to build a sustainable business, then you'll be on the right track.
And Jason, help me picture this agency landscape that you are referring to. Are these like agencies like more of marketing agencies, or are they like consultants? But what function do they take in the business of that merchant?
So it's usually in what I'm thinking of for you, because you're a SaaS technology enablement platform and you're effectively an adjunct. I think that the agency types that you would usually be working with would be dev agencies. So the partner who's actually doing the implementation of their core e-commerce technology, whether that's Magento, BigCom, Shopify, WooCommerce, whatever kind of e-commerce platform they're working with, you are going to be working primarily with that agency, the technical agency. the implementation agency. You're probably not going to be working with a marketing agency because it's not marketing really that your technology supports. So Klaviyo would oftentimes be a function of two agencies. It would be function of a brand's marketing agency and their technical agency, because there's a technical component, but then there's also a marketing benefit. And oftentimes their marketing agency will want to take over the campaign aspects of managing Klaviyo. They'll help them create the campaigns, they'll help them create the segments, they'll help them do all that campaign-based work, but it still needs a technical partner to do the initial implementation and configuration, right? So Klaviyo works with almost all types of agencies because their service, it requires multiple agencies to implement and extract ROI out of. In your case, you're not primarily a marketing platform, you are primarily a sales platform and a technical platform to enable sales. So your primary partnerships are going to be technical e-commerce implementation agencies.
Okay, I get it. Okay, excellent. That helps me a lot, because it now actually for the first time I have this understanding that, okay, what you're saying is that, look, there are already those go-to-market, let's call them agent or agencies, that have a portfolio of solutions, and now it's all about advocating the right solution. And here it's all about adding that solution to their portfolio, because I can be convinced that, okay, that is such a compelling solution for the dealer of the merchant to sell the product, that it makes sense to add it to their basket, right?
It's not just that, it's 100% that, but it's also that, because remember, the agency is not engaging with the dealers. They're engaging with the merchant, the brand.
Yes.
They're engaging with the brand. They're engaging with the manufacturer. They're not engaging with the dealers. But what they are trying to do is to help the merchant sell more products more easily via the dealer channel. So if you can demonstrate to the agency how they, by helping deploy your technology in the merchant environment, if you can prove to them how much benefit you will bring to the merchant through your system, because remember, they don't ultimately have an obligation to the dealers. They have an obligation to the merchant, because it's the merchant that's paying them for their services. Secondarily, there is going to be a cost to the agency, especially up front. So when I take on a new platform, I have to build a practice around that platform. And so when I don't take on any new platform lightly, because when I take it on, I have to learn at a very deep level how that platform operates, how I solution on top of that platform, how I position that platform with the right merchants at the right time in the right scenario. And so I will usually have to invest anywhere from 80 hours, 100 hours, something like in that neighborhood. Maybe if it's a very basic platform, maybe it's only 20 hours or something like that I would have to deep dive into the platform. And from an enablement perspective, maybe it only takes me 20 hours for a basic platform that is not a full-blown e-commerce platform. Maybe it's just a piece of enablement technology, and it doesn't take me that long to learn about it enough to be able to solution and scope that product into a project. But for agencies, when they go to take on a new technology, it's not just taking on the technology, it's building a practice around that technology. And so very few agencies will take on a new technology willy-nilly, because they know I'm going to have devs that I'm going to have to allocate to this technology. They're going to have to understand it. They're going to have to learn it. They're going to have to understand how it integrates with all these other technologies as part of the stack. So this is an investment on their part to take on your technology. And so in every way that you engage with an agency, you have to have empathy for the level of commitment they will have to make to you to support that technology, not just upfront, but on an ongoing basis. Because remember, those merchants will hold them accountable for the technology that they recommend over the long term. And if they recommend the wrong technology or it's implemented poorly, that's going to reflect on the agency. And if they do that one too many times, that merchant's going to be looking for a new agency, right? So no agency takes on new technology. Any agency that cares about their future will not take on new technology lightly. So if you always go into those conversations with deep empathy for the challenge that agencies face, especially in the new world of AI, there is new AI technology being released every single day that's just chipping away at the services that they provide, or at least the merchant thinks that they won't need the agency for these things because they think, oh, I could just have AI do it. It's not always true, but the merchant thinks that it's the case. And so agencies are trying to differentiate themselves just to survive. Right? The agency life is very hard. I know. I've built several agencies. It's bloody hard. Consultancy is hard because we have to build a sales engine and a customer acquisition engine, but we also have to keep those clients happy over the long term to continue to recommend us, to continue to use our services, etc. So it's got its own unique set of challenges, just like you have your unique set of challenges as a SaaS vendor, right?
Yeah. Well, look, I love it, Jason. I really love it because you laid out the agency word for me, and this actually is also is like a second proof of concept, right? Because the agencies, as you said, will not take on new technology lightly, right? They will make sure that it fits to their reputation because they have earned their reputation in the market and they want to keep their reputation in the market. So anything they take on is in terms of new technology in order to maybe offer it to their client base has to be proven. So this is another proof of our SaaS platform in the market. And that's how I will basically evaluate it, or that's basically so to say.
The other thing that I would recommend for you, specifically because your platform is a B2B SaaS platform, there are not many agencies that specialize in B2B. I'll tell you that right now, that most agencies, I would say circa 80 to 90% of agencies specialize in D2C and B2C merchant services, right? They don't specialize in B2B. A lot of them will tell you that they do, but when you look at the split of projects that they work on, 8 or 9 out of 10 of those projects are B2C or D2C. They are not B2B. And when you start asking them about the mix, even if they say, hey, we do B2B, we do D2C, we do B2C, we do all that, we understand all that. When you start asking them in a gentle, probing way, okay, cool, but what is the mix of your projects? Out of 10 projects, how many would be B2B projects versus D2C versus B2C, right? And in your case, any agency that has a really strong D2C background is probably complementary to your technology, or your technology is complementary to that basket of clients. Now, let's talk about definitions here because everybody has a slightly different definition of D2C and B2C and what the differences are between those. I think D2C is much more closely aligned to B2B than B2B is aligned with B2C. And I'll tell you why based on my definition of those three. Direct to consumer is, for me, a manufacturer, a wholesaler, or a distributor selling to an end retail customer. B2B is a manufacturer, a wholesaler, or distributor selling to a business customer, right? B2C is a brand that is usually an aggregator retailer, but in all cases, they are selling somebody else's stuff to the end customer, right? They're not a manufacturer, they're not a wholesaler, they're not a distributor. They are a retailer of products that they don't make, that then they sell to the end consumer, not businesses, or they don't target businesses. They're usually targeting end consumers. And so in that environment, D2C and B2B are kissing cousins because both of those merchants are manufacturers, wholesalers, and or distributors, right? And so I think your technology works particularly well in the D2C and B2B space, but probably not so well in the B2C space because they don't have dealers. They've got retail consumers. And so I think that any agency that has a really strong D2C background in the context of the definition I just gave you for D2C, and agencies that have a very strong B2B services background and work, and you can further vet the agency by the e-commerce platforms that they support. So if an agency only supports Shopify, let's say they're a Shopify agency, I would say they're not going to be a great fit for you because Shopify is a B2C focused platform. Yes, D2C too, but primarily a B2C focused platform, right? So it's got weak B2B functionality out of the box. You usually, 99% of the time, if you want to do B2B on Shopify, you're going to have to use an app. You're going to have to use like a Sparkler or Wholesale Gorilla or one of the other B2B apps out there. However, if you are talking to merchants that support, say, Magento, BigCommerce, VTEX, some of the other heavily B2B enabled platforms, then that's probably going to give you some insight into the fact that they have B2B experience or they can get it and upskill pretty rapidly in servicing B2B merchants. The final piece of advice I will give you, if you go to an agency with your cap in hand, where you're just asking for leads from them, basically, that is never going to work. What I would suggest that you do is you tell them, because remember, agencies are going to have to build a practice around your technology, and that's all fine and good, but they don't just want to be a source of opportunities. They want you to be a source of opportunities for them. So
Right.
I would always try to say, this is not just what I'm looking for from you, and I'll just effectively pay you a commission for bringing me opportunities that I didn't have to source myself. There has to be a bigger benefit than that. And that means an opportunity to secure new clients from scratch. So let's say you go in and let's say you're generating demand of your own for your technology platform. And let's say you engage with a merchant that currently uses WordPress, and either they're using Woo in addition or they're not, but they don't have an agency partner because they're still relatively small, let's say, and they're trying to do everything themselves in-house. Now, you and I know that in order to succeed massively in e-commerce, you're going to need competent technical partners. If you sell paper, for example, you don't need to be a development agency. You sell paper. Why would you want to have a development agency in-house? Or why would you want to have developers in-house? It doesn't make sense. It's a complete distraction. Your core business is not developing websites. It's selling paper, right? So in that scenario, what you can do is then you can say, look, sure, our tech platform is probably easy enough for you to implement on your own, but it would be a heck of a lot easier from a strategic, technical perspective that you align yourself with an agency partner that can help you scale, right? Because you're not a dev house. You sell paper. In that case, you now all of a sudden become a lead source or demand generation source for those agencies. And you can say, look, I'm going to put you in touch with 2 or 3 agencies that we work with. There's no obligation that you work with them, but I think it would massively benefit your business. And then you can decide whether one of those couple of agencies is valuable to you and is worth forming a relationship with, is worth forming a partnership with. Is that okay with you, Mr., Mrs. Client? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, thank you very much. I'd love to have at least have a conversation with them and see how it goes. So you got to think about
it also has this, it's not only that it's a warm lead, yes, in terms of the sales cycle, yes, it's maybe a warm lead, but it's a recommendation, right? It's a recommendation and it's coming from a trusted source, right? So it's word of mouth, and what's better than word of mouth recommendation?
You've nailed it. So I know that we got a little bit long-winded, and I wouldn't normally go into this level of detail. I try to just give some quick, short, sharp winning opportunities to my mentees. I wouldn't necessarily go into this granular detail, but because I know this space so well and I have so much empathy for agencies, and I have so many partner agencies as part of my consultancy, where they send me work based on where their client is at when the client hits them. Sometimes the client isn't ready to engage with an agency yet, and they really need to work with a consultant first. And so they'll send me opportunities and vice versa. Once I have finished with the BRD phase, say, for example, and the client is ready to go to, because I don't do implementations. I don't have a dev team. I'm pure consultancy, right? So they will need an implementation partner. So I then can recommend, say, 2 or 3 or 4 agencies that might be a good fit for their existing, the project that we're discussing with them. And then I'll say, look, let's go and get some proposals from those agencies. Let's sit down with them. Let's let them walk us through their proposal and how they would deliver this project. And then ultimately it's your decision of who you go with in terms of the agency, but I can help you. I can handhold you through that search and select process, both for technology and agency. And so not only have I built agencies, but I've been on the other side where I'm trying to find a suitable agency for my clients for the implementation. So I guess I have empathy across the spectrum for how this works.
Certainly, I can hear your heartbeat there for that topic.
Very much, very much. Hopefully that gives you some insights that maybe is a bit unique that you haven't heard from anybody else.
I have not, and it's been an excellent session again, and so many insights. I took many notes, and yes, it's ready to pounce on it, what to say.
If you'd like to get mentored by Jason for free, head over to greenwoodconsulting.net, scroll to the bottom of the page, and click Get Mentored by Jason.